Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Billick. You can find me and the show on Instagram. We're at picky_fingers, or on Twitter, that's at Banjo Podcast. Or you can always email the show at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. I have a freshly picked episode for you today. And for those uninitiated, the freshly picked episodes, it's still an interview with a fantastic banjo player, but rather than going into that banjo player's specific style and background, we take a look at a newly released recording from a banjo player's perspective. And today we have a great one with one of my favorite banjo players, so stay tuned for that in just a couple minutes. But another thing I realized when I was putting this show together is the next episode after this will be basically the 5-year anniversary of episode number 1 of the show. So I'm going to try to think up something kind of cool to do to commemorate the longevity or stubbornness, you might say, of me and the mighty Banjo Podcast here. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'm only one man trying to put this together. And even though I'm just one person producing the show, I absolutely could not do it without the help of people like Laura Burke. Laura is today's Patreon supporter of the episode. So Laura, thank you so much for supporting the show. I could not do it without you and the rest of my VIPs, the very important pickers, who go over to patreon.com/banjopodcast, pitch in a few dollars per month to keep this show on the tracks and allow all of you to keep hearing from these banjo heroes and rising stars that we get to hear from on the podcast. So once again, that's patreon.com/banjopodcast, and thank you one more time to Laura Burke. And you know what? I just mentioned my VIPs, the very important pickers. Those are the Patreon supporters. Fair warning, we have our monthly VIP video meetup this upcoming Saturday. That's February 28th, and that's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So pay attention on Patreon to get that video meeting link and come hang out with me and your fellow VIP listeners.
Though today I am far from you, someday soon when we are near, I will think to say I love you. You are close enough to hear.
Today's freshly picked episode features a banjo-centric deep dive into the brand new album from the band Mile 12, and that album is titled Close Enough to Hear. Now, of course, being the Banjo Podcast, this is going to be a guided deep dive with the fantastic Mile 12 banjoist Bowness, who is also a veteran of the Picky Fingers Podcast. So listen back to her featured episode to find out more about her personally. But I was really excited to catch back up with her and catch up about the news around Mile 12. There has been quite a bit, including new members of the band. So she's going to explain all that for us and take us on a tour through the new Mile 12 release, Close Enough to Hear. So without further ado, put your hands together for Bowness of Mile 12. Welcome back. It's been a while since you've been on the podcast, but it's great to see you, and thanks for taking the time to talk with me.
Oh, likewise. Great to see you again.
Yeah, you too. So we are here on the occasion. Your band, Mile 12, just came out with a new album like within a few days ago, right?
So recent. Yeah, February 3rd.
Yeah, excellent. Now, when was that actually recorded? I'm getting the feeling that it was maybe in the can for a while before it graced us with its presence.
It was kind of a long time coming. Yeah, it was recorded in 2021, like spring of 2021. But it would have been recorded, I think, like a full year before that, if not for the pandemic and band member changes and a lot of upheaval going on with us. We also, to add to that, we had like 2 or 3 COVID delays. The producer, the engineer we
even
worked
after
with.
you did start recording it?
Yeah, even after we got new band members, and we're like, we got all these tunes, everything's ready to go. And then we even had like people getting sick with COVID, like, oh, push it back a week, push it back a month, you know.
Oh my God.
So it took a while.
Scheduling is a nightmare.
Yeah, super hard.
So there's a ton to dig into, even just with what you said. I guess, first of all, you said that you were going to perhaps go into the studio even a year earlier when you had still your previous band members, and we'll talk about band member changes too. Does that mean it would be all the same, would have been all the same material, do you think, and just with a different unit playing them?
Yeah, in fact, we worked up a lot of these songs with David and Bronwyn, who were in the band. And
Sure.
We came out of the pandemic. We had like a full year and a half where we didn't even see each other, let alone like play any gigs. Because, David was in Ireland and Bronwyn was in Nashville, Nate was in New York. So we were really spread out. We a lot of bands I think were able to do some stuff, but we were like, there's no way. So we finally got back together again. This was in, I think, June of, when was it? 2021. I forget all the timelines now. But right out of the pandemic, we finally got back together and we had like a week-long rehearsal with David and Bronwyn. And we got to work on all these amazing new songs that Evan had spent like a year perfecting. Right. And there were even more than like ended up on the album. He'd written so many songs over the course of that year off that we basically got to go through and listen to like 25 songs and be like, these are all of our favorite 12 or whatever, and a couple from Nate. And so we rehearsed them. We arranged most of them with David and Bronwyn, played the rest of that year out. We were back to playing festivals, played at Winfield, played at Ogden, played a bunch of summer festivals that were, luckily we got to play Rocky Grass even, right? That was like one of the first festivals back. And then David sent us an email and said, guys, I think, he had a lot going on in his life with Tabitha moving to America and just things changing, So he was like, I think my time with the band is coming to an end, sadly. So that brought up this whole like question of like, what do we do? Like, are we still going to be a band? Is Bronwyn going to be, leaving? Or, she had this offer from Molly Tuttle. Turns out that was a very good move on her part. Yeah. We ended up deciding that we were so proud of these songs, and we just spent, 6 months like playing them and arranging them. We wanted to like get them out, like it felt like we needed to record this album. So we thought, okay, let's see if we can find the right people for the job and, keep this band kind of alive. So we were so lucky. I mean, it was very sad to have David and Bronwyn leaving. They're just amazing people, amazing players. And, we kind of like grew up together with all of us. So we grew up, not that that's over, but we grew a lot together. But luckily we found, I think, the right people for the job. Corey Brodsky on the mandolin came in and Ella Jordan on the fiddle. And they're just incredible people and great players, and sort of, they're tough shoes to fill if you even want to think of it that way. I mean, I think it's sort of like you're just putting on different shoes now, but they certainly have done the job. So it's been really fun.
For how disruptive that can be, even in the best circumstances, it's a disruptive thing. So having people like that to hire really helps smooth things out as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And, immediately it was like, oh, this is wonderful. Like the sound of the band, it's a new band, like you change 2 of 5 parts and it does, it doesn't have the same exact sound anymore, obviously, because 2 people play differently. You could never, be identical, and we wouldn't want them to be. So there's been a lot of like musical change, I would say. A big part of it is that Ella sings really beautifully, and you hear that on one of the tracks on the CD. Yeah. And so she's come in like powerhouse vocals with adding to the harmony parts on all the trios as well. And hearing Corey just step out and, he's an amazing soloist. He's such a clear improvising voice that's like a real pleasure to try and follow.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So is it also fair to say that a lot of these were recorded without, I guess I don't know what your band's process would usually be, but I think it's pretty typical that by the time a band records an album, they've been playing a lot of the songs that they've recorded for maybe months at gigs and trying to really hone in what they're supposed to sound like. Is it fair to say that maybe your band didn't have that benefit with these, or where was that at?
You would think so. You would think it would be like that, but actually we were performing like most of these songs that we recorded before David and Brian even left the band. So because we had worked them up and then done about 6 months of touring before they left. So, and it was a definite weird few months of settling back into what does this new band sound like? What is the groove? Like we were definitely pretty lumpy in the first few months, I would say. And we were touring just around the Northeast, but immediately we were playing all these same songs. Like we just sent Corey and Ella the rehearsal recordings of like what is now the record. And so they came into the first rehearsal knowing every song off what is now recorded and off our previous albums, which is incredible. They definitely did their homework. So we had about probably a full year of playing with, like performing these exact songs with Corey and Ella, as well as with like David. So that's what I mean by it was really delayed. Like we should have probably made this recording. If David and Brian hadn't left the band, we would have put it out probably with them like back in, 2021, I guess.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago,
So the leadoff tune, you got me in my head about how I pronounce tune now.
Tune.
The leadoff tune is Romulus, and as it turns out, this is actually probably the bluegrassiest tune on the whole album, I think. I really love the epic story, which always makes for a good song, and it's credited to Evan. Do you know, is he particularly into like mythology and stories like that? Is that where his head is most of the time for these things?
I don't know exactly. Like when he introduces a song on stage, he often does a little bit. It's like when we all look up the spark notes for what happened, on the Odyssey, then, so I don't know that he's like super deep into it. I'm sure he like studied a little bit at school, but I think it was more just like a song idea that popped up. Like he had this image of, a guy on a beach probably, and it kind of started from there. I'm not a songwriter, so I don't know exactly what was going on through his head, but I'm certainly glad it did.
No, but it just has cool imagery and some intense types of sounding themes that you don't always get from bluegrass songs, which is really cool. You get a cool banjo break, and it definitely has a bit for us banjo players to listen to. Some cool melodic, some cool single string. I'm wondering, is that an improvised solo that you have on this?
I'm scars on the earth. I'm a virgin mother's birth. I'm fire and I am death. I'm a crumbling world's first breath. And the souls down in hell, all the tales that they could tell.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I think the entire record is improvised solos from everyone. I'm just trying to remember if the bass and the guitar were, but like the way we recorded the album was kind of set up to be that way because it was mostly very live. Like the mandolin and the bass and the guitar were all in the same room, even just with baffles. And the banjo and the fiddle were isolated, I think, just for how loud they are. And the space we had wasn't big enough to have everyone in the same room. So for it, like every single mandolin solo on the record is just one entire solo that he took. We got to go through, we would do the track like 6-7 times, however many, until it felt really rocking. And then like on listening back, Corey would say, oh, like solo number 4 is like my favorite. And so that would be the mandolin solo. But, you know, entire solos. So for him, they're entire solos. For me, it was more like I got to go, like I could take from like half this solo and half that solo if I wanted to, because I was isolated.
Yeah.
So it like, I think the Romulus one, if I can remember right, is spliced in like 3 different places maybe, but it's all improvised, like, but it's not the entire solo. So
I get it, yeah.
So like I might have taken like take 4 of like the first half of it, and then I don't like where it goes after that. So I switch to, you know, take 6. And then I get back into
together,
take 4 or something like that. Yeah, so it's a bit comped, but it's not like I worked. Like I wasn't, I didn't compose a solo and play it the same every time and then pick the best one, if you know what I mean.
And as long as you're tracking to a click track, then you can do that pretty much as you want.
We didn't track to a click, actually. But
really? And you were still able to comp the solos?
Yeah.
That's great.
We practiced a fair amount with the metronome before recording, and we would practice like before going on stage. Even now, we still do this as a band. We'll like warm up a bit by like playing all together with the click, which I don't know that many bands do that. It's kind of just this weird thing we got into a habit of doing. But we found it really helpful because it keeps the tempos like a little bit steadier, and like if we have this pretty recent memory of where, you know we have metronome markings for all the songs, and we like know where ideally they should be, but we didn't track with the click. We didn't for our previous album either, because I think we regretted doing it on our first one. It just sounds like too like stiff, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons. Well, that's really impressive to hear about.
Yeah, I think you can get away with more than you realize you can, you know what I mean? Like we sometimes it probably wouldn't work, like we just try something like, but if the band's feeling good and the solo is a good solo, I feel like it was probably around a similar enough tempo that you wouldn't notice. Yeah.
So given that you were doing a lot of improvising, I mean, there's still an amount of planning or preparing that you could do to get used to improvising over, if it's certain changes or with a certain melody. Tell us about like how you do that, or what do you do to get yourself comfortable with that progression so that you can go in and without a solo prepared and still pull it off.
Yeah, totally. I mean, especially for something like our band is not like, you know, we don't play real long solos. We're not like a jammy band or anything. Mm-hmm. So they're often pretty short solos. So you're kind of getting in and getting out and having your 10 seconds in the sun. But for this one, it was a little longer. And it's a quicker tempo. Like you said, it's like the bluegrassiest one on the record. So it's definitely one that I like to practice on and like warm up with. And I often have like similar things, like I say it's improvised, but really, I mean, I always have like ideas. I have like a roadmap of what I would want to do. And it's just a matter of like, which way is the wind blowing tonight,
right,
as to which way down the path I go. So, you know, a good example of that would be like it's in E. And so often, you know, I start, I think, on the 5 chord, like before the solo. And so I start like doing things on the 5 chord, like 6th voicings. And that's where like the solo actually starts. So there's all this like lead in time before you even get into the solo. And I usually like every time we're on stage or in the studio, it's similar. I like always start that same way. I don't know why. It just feels good. And, you know, it's easy to get this like rolling.
Makes for a good transition.
Yeah, makes for a good transition. Yeah, because the lick before it is like. It's like this diminished chord to like this major chord, and then it finally goes to the 5 chord. So it's just like where I already am is on that voicing, you know. You know, so from there, it's like the toughest part about the solo for me is how long it is. That was a quarter of it, what I just did. So you have to keep this improvising going and keep some kind of a flow. That's why I say I always have like a roadmap, because you have to have like a lot of things to say at 135 beats a minute. You're playing on top of a bluegrass band. Yeah. So yeah, I often just do like try to create melodies that are new melodies, but with the same voicings, you know. So like on E, if the chord is just E, I forget exactly how long the E chord is, but you can do a lot of like cool stuff just moving that around. and just changing the rhythm of the roll slightly, you know. So usually I just jam out on that kind of idea for a while. And then like another thing I like to do, I forget what ended up on the record or what didn't, but we play this one live every time, you know. So I'd like to do like a 3-note roll on like F sharp minor and G sharp minor. And then kind of like keep going if I'm feeling frisky, you know. That kind of idea where I'm really riffing around all that. And then the trickiest part, and this is usually what I have to like practice warming up on each day before we go play this song, is at some point I usually end up switching to single string. And that's the part that's the hard thing, the transition. So yeah, I often practice that, and I found that I tend to get into single string like from rolling ideas in a similar way, which is kind of starting, instead of going like, you know, immediately into like 8th note single string, often I do this like offbeat kind of, you know, like just to ease into it kind of. I don't know that I've really thought that out, but it tends to be what I'm like the successful transitions or, you know, there's like this.
That's a good, it's a good tip. Yeah.
It's like kind of you get yourself in there without having to go directly from rolling 8th notes to roll like 8th notes single string.
Yeah. Very cool. You don't double thumb like the bass note, do you? Do you ever do that when you're doing some of your like, I don't know. It's so hard for me to like vocalize what.
Right. On like, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like that.
It's always like single string though, right? Thumb, index, thumb. But yeah, that's a great sound to do. Like all the rhythm options for that. And then, you know, slipping, I didn't do very well with him, but like going in and out of that kind of idea, like the low drone kind of thing with the rhythmic, like, there's a lot of good hacks there for playing ideas on faster tunes.
For sure. So next on the album is the first single, Johnny Oklahoma. Basically the same comment I made about like having a cool story be the background of a song. What is this one about? Is this like a circus stuntman getting shot out of a cannon? Like, what is with this one? So
it's a pretty dark one, actually. Like, the guy that gets blown out of the cannon is doing it. He's knowingly doing it as a sacrifice to his community, and he's going to his death.
From a silent swallowing, the cannon blast exploded like the universe emerging into light. Johnny Oklahoma disappeared into the clouds and left the stillness and the smoky drifting white. Goodbye, Johnny Oklahoma. You were the bravest of us all. Everyone is honored to have known you. Old boys can die, but legends never fall.
It's not like super obvious in the song. Well, I guess it is because his mother says in like one of the verses, like, I hope, you know, other young boys don't start to do this. Yeah, so it's super dark. It's like, it's very worrying. But I love this song. Even, you know, it's kind of like, there's actually, you know what I should pull up? I should have had this pulled up, but because we've done a lot of like PR for the album now, and Evan like wrote down a bunch of like pretty detailed notes about each song. So I should remember them because I'm in the band. But right. Yeah, like my memory of the song is, you know, it's kind of like it's a very dark spin on, you know, going out and sacrificing for your community. And so this kid is like, yep, I'm going to get blown out of a cannon. And for some reason, it's not clear in the song why, like what that does for the community, but it's this long-standing tradition where like it's good. It brings the community together and it's very important. And all the other people, all the other young boys are looking up to it. He's like a hero, you know?
Right. Yeah. It's kind of, like you said, it's this sacrifice for someone's good, and maybe it's not clear, but it's some interesting imagery, no doubt about it.
For sure.
I love the arranged banjo and mandolin parts. So take me through how you guys worked that out. Is that maybe even left over from the David arrangements, or was this a new thing?
It was the David arrangements. I remember coming up with it. I think we were all sitting in the room together, David and Bronwyn were in the band, but it was like we did this whole week of arranging, and so this was definitely one of the later songs in the day, and we were doing like 9 to 5, which is far too long to be arranging all day. But because David and Bronwyn flew in just for rehearsal purposes, so we're like, let's do full days. So this was definitely
worth it, yeah.
Yeah, it was like 3 p.m. one of the afternoons, and it was like the last song we hit that day, and everyone was checked out. Like everyone. So I remember David sitting there being like, yeah, it's a good idea, Beebs. Like, figure out some role or something. And I was like, well, okay, I'm not sure exactly what to do. But yeah, it's like over, it's in B flat, and we're just doing like a D minor arpeggio and then to a B flat major. So it's pretty straight ahead, really.
Okay.
And then the next little line is just like a major scale down and sliding in. So yeah, maybe this is what, we were so checked out. This is what we could come up with. And then the last line is A minor. A minor arpeggio is just down, so over the F.
Yeah.
Did I say the song was in B flat, or did I say the song was in F?
I think you said B flat.
Yeah, it's definitely in the key of F.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it's 6 to 4, I guess, would be the first 2 chords, and then down.
Yeah, there's something about the harmonies
scale
that you guys use that kind of gives it a little bit of like a fantasy world sort of vibe. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think David or what Corey ended up doing was just harmonizing that line. So he's probably up here, and I'm down here, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Would you say this album overall is a bit more arranged in those kind of ways than maybe previous Mile 12 records? It seems like it to me, but that might just be because, preparing for this, maybe I listened to it a bit closer than I have, but it definitely had some of those parts that seemed much more arranged.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the tunes, because there was one on our last record that we talked about last time. Actually, it was David's tune Rialto, and that was
a great one.
Hyper arranged. I still have to count that every time I hear the tune. I'm like, it's in 7 or something. I have to count every single time. It's it's very complicated. So that was probably more complicated than anything that's on this new album. But I would say my personal opinion of the new record to the old record is the songwriting is stronger, I would say, and the stories are clearer. And the old record, it was just a little bit more themed in that bluegrass tradition, I guess. This, songs are a little bit more to be expected. Whereas already we've covered a guy getting blown out of a cannon and the Roman Empire. So it's just a little bit more unique, I guess, the
Not
songwriting.
your typical bluegrass songs.
Yeah, and we tried to really some of the songs are really simply arranged, and there's not much to them. And I think that's just us being, I think old Mile 12 would be we've got to do every trick in the bag on every record, and this time we were well, if the song isn't calling for it, we're not going to do it. There's no song at 170 on this record, just because none of the songs Evan wrote needed to go at 170 beats a minute,
Yeah, exactly. Was there any particular reason to make it the first single? I mean, it's a great song. What did the band hear in terms of wanting to put that foot forward?
I think actually Close Enough to Here might have been the first single we released, but and I think Johnny, I'm terrible at remembering this stuff, but I think Johnny Oklahoma was second. But I would have been happy putting it first, because this is my favorite song on the record, I think. It's just so cool. Weird, and it's so clear, the songwriting, there's just such clear imagery I love. But yeah, I think we're just trying to put the strongest kind of material out there in the world. I think it's hard to choose on this album because there's a lot of good stuff, but
just one that everyone felt good about.
Yeah, I think you all kind of unspokenly know what's going to be the best song, on a record. You might not want to say it, but for us, it's Evan wrote all the songs, so it's he's except for the one that Nate sings and the one that Ella sings. So Evan's really just competing with himself.
And your banjo tune.
Oh, thanks. Yes, can't forget about the banjo tune.
Hey folks, just need to take a quick break to tell you all about my good friends up in Lansing, Michigan at Elderly Instruments. Now you might be thinking that with Elderly's amazing selection and their fast worldwide shipping, that they are some big box conglomerate store. But no, Elderly has been family owned since 1972, and they pride themselves on giving you the customer service and personal touch that only a mom and pop store can give you. So the next time you need anything for your banjo, guitar, violin, mandolin, any stringed instruments, accessories, instructional materials, and I'm talking about whether you're looking for a beginner instrument or even a high-end, vintage, hard-to-find item, Elderly's going to have you covered. It's my first place that I go. So check them out at elderly.com, and don't forget to let them know that the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast sent you. This podcast is also brought to you by Peghead Nation, a site that brings you streaming video courses in banjo, guitar, mandolin, fiddle, dobro, upright bass, and ukulele. You can learn bluegrass, old time, and plenty of other roots music styles from some of the most talented players and instructors in the world. Now, some of what Peghead Nation offers is a great lineup, of course, of banjo instruction. Check out these courses: Beginning Banjo with Bill Evans, Bluegrass Banjo with Bill Evans, Clawhammer Banjo with Evie Layden, Wade Ward Style Banjo with Bruce Molsky, The Banjo According to Danny Barnes, and Contemporary Bluegrass Banjo with Wes Corbett. Now, regardless of what course you choose, you're going to get high-quality multi-angle video lessons, downloadable notation and tab, play-along tracks, and plenty of tunes to play. Now, perhaps the best part of all this is that just by being a Picky Fingers podcast listener, you are going to get your first month free. Just go to pegheadnation.com and use the promo code PickyFingers at checkout. That's PickyFingers, all lowercase, all one word, over at pegheadnation.com. And then you just mentioned it, but the title track is next, Close Enough to Hear. Same sort of question. Obviously, it's the title track, so I'm wondering what kind of meaning did the title have to the band that made it a good choice to have the album called that?
It was tough. We weren't sold on like calling the album that for a while. There was it got suggested a long time before we committed to it because we're not sure. But that song, Close Enough to Hear, was a song that Evan wrote like really quickly after the pandemic. It was mid-pandemic, and he's really close with his family in Boston. They see each other like every 3 days, it feels like, they live really close together. And so for him, unlike me, right, where I have to like fly across the world to see my family, Evan's used to just being able to nip down the road and pop in for a cup of tea or whatever they do. And he couldn't do that for the first time in his life. And so he was really feeling that, as I think so many of us were. And this song just kind of popped out of him really quickly. A lot of times he like labors over songs for months and months and revisits them and revises them. Not this one, it just sort of like came out. And I think it just sort of sums up the time of like between the last record and this new record. I feel like that was like what was going on for all of us, missing each other, missing all of our families. The whole, music industry was turned upside down. The band nearly died and came back to life. So I feel like that song just kind of sums up this time period for us in a nice way.
Yeah, that makes sense. Moving on to Red Grapes on the Vine, is that, I know Nate is credited as having written this one. Is that him singing it too?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh, wow. It definitely has like a very unique, like vocal type of sound. It's almost like crooner-ish in some ways, and that's meant to be a compliment. It's definitely got that like a little extra soul factor to it.
Yeah, I think we were all thrilled with how that one turned out. And Nate, he's always like sung like a song or maybe even a couple songs on our records, but he really put himself out there for this one, and got a really good vocal take, and I think it came across really well.
Each day, right when the storm comes, I just stand out in the rain, watching father after father screaming out his name, and the mothers all just sit there asking why, and the children all just look up at the sky. What will sparkling wine, but they're just red grapes on the vine.
Yeah, it's Nate's like background growing up was his mom is an opera singer, and he grew up doing like choral music before he touched a bass, like long before. So I feel like he's got that like, you know, that vibe sort of creeps in sometimes. Even on this song is like a rock kind of rock feel, right? Like jazzy rock feel, I would say.
Yeah.
And he's got still that like element of like choral music. You know, it's like all of those three things clashing in my mind, and it brings out Nate.
No, I absolutely hear that. And something I think we sort of alluded to when we were talking about how you arranged things on this album, but like, and I could say this about a lot of the songs, but I'll say it about this one, I guess, just to get us started. It's pretty striking how sparse a lot of it is. It definitely gives the album on the whole like a more mature and like I said, kind of a highly arranged kind of sound. And I guess I'm just wanting to hear you talk about how conscious of a decision that was to maybe go a whole verse without playing your banjo, or when you do play, you're not just playing Foggy Mountain Rolls through everything. You're playing a line and having it. I mean, you know what you did, but
right, yeah.
So yeah, just talk about how that approach came to be.
I think, it wasn't like a conscious, like we didn't really arrange it thinking this would be an album. Like we arranged kind of each song on its own, and then we're like, well, these are the best 10 songs we have, so this will be the album. Like I know some people do like, we're going to create an album and like arrange it through almost. But for us, it was like, yeah, there's some tracks just don't have that much banjo, or they don't, you know, not everyone solos in every song by any means, not even close to. So I think it's just trying to make that song the best it can be. Like if we only put one song out, it would be like a really good story and a really good musical like arrangement. And for me, like I often had to be like, whoa, do you think the banjo should like come in at all, guys? Like I would be sitting there sometimes in rehearsal being like, I don't want the banjo on, you know, I know I'm the banjo player, but like it's this beautiful song and like you have a really complete sounding groove. I don't even know what to add, you know? So that's like on like Nate's song, there's just that like riff at the beginning, you know, that like Al and I play together. And then the rest of the time I'm pretty much just like, just doing chordal, kind of staying out of the way a little bit.
Yeah, it's very sparse. Yeah.
Very sparse, yeah. Yeah, I just, you know, I think it depends on who's in your band and who's writing the songs, but like the songs that tend to have gotten written in the last year or two, I don't know, to me don't feel like they need raging banjo. They're just like good songs.
Do you think it's mostly the songs, or do you think it's equally maybe, are you perhaps changing the way you hear music, or think that your banjo, the role of your banjo plays with it?
I guess it could be. I mean, I feel like on previous albums, we've just been a little bit more in the bluegrass box. Like, so we'll be like, this is kind of our mashy tune, and this is our like super fast tune, and this is our power waltz. And we had like every type of bluegrass. Whereas these songs, it's not at all like coming from that. It's just like whatever songs got written, now how do we like make them sound good with the five of us? And so like, I don't know, I feel like just the nature of Evan and Nate and me, you know, but like all of us growing up where we did and listening to the music we did is not really bluegrass. So there's like less of a clear role for the banjo to do, which is kind of frightening at times. You know, it's like, what do I even do? You know, it's like, there's not going to be a banjo kick on this song. It's like an Americana kind of halftime groovy thing, you know? It's like, so just like do some sparkly things and try and like not draw attention to the fact that there's banjo on it almost. I mean, that sounds bad, I guess, because we're on a banjo podcast, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely why like some of the tunes and live will play, you know, a few bluegrass songs and stuff like that. So it's a different thing when we're playing like a live show, but yeah, just trying to make the song sound good. That's kind of that's been our like new Mile 12 motto.
For sure. And now to everyone's favorite, Hopping Around Telluride, BB's banjo tune. Tell us about this one. I think I read that this was inspired about, or inspired by what, a trip you took with your mom the first time you came to the States. Is that right?
Yeah. So as in instrumental tunes, you can, I guess you can have an idea of like, what tune you're going to write before you write it. But it was the other way around for me on this one. I was just sitting down and I was definitely thinking about that trip and thinking about my mom. But I wasn't like setting out to write her a tune particularly. Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of more like just a mood that came across. And I was like, you know what, it would be cool is to like dedicate this to Mum, because it was just an epic journey. And, we flew to America for the first time together and drove across the country together and, a lot of good memories. So I wanted to make sure that it was named for her.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, it definitely, as I can imagine your trip with your mom must have been, it definitely has like a playful, adventurous type of vibe to it. In general, how do you compose pieces for banjo? Is it similar to what you just said? Sit around noodling and maybe be inspired by a mood or a memory? Is that pretty typical for you?
Yeah, and often I'm not real structured with writing. I know some people are really good like that. They're like set themselves deadlines and like write the tunes. For me, it's usually like, you know what? I haven't had a tune written for the band in like 5 years. I should write a tune that the band could do. And that's what comes out of like that. I'm writing for that purpose usually. And so I'll just, maybe I need to write like 5 tunes before I get a good one that's like shareable. But yeah, it is often like that. Or I might be more specific and I might think of a key or a style of tune just to get myself started. Like, I think putting limitations on yourself is a really good way. Because if you just say, I'm just going to write music, that's pretty up in the air, right?
Whereas it's intimidating. There are too many possibilities.
Absolutely. Whereas if you say, I'm going to write a waltz in the key of C that has 2 parts and the B part's going to go to B flat, right? That gives you a place to start. And maybe you start writing that waltz in C and you say, oh, you know what? Actually, I want it to go to the key of A in the B part, or I want it to actually not be a waltz. But it just gets you started, which I think is good.
Well, speaking of limitations or a predetermined structure like that, this tune is fairly unique. I love how it introduces a different part of the tune not until, like 2/3 of the way through or 3/4 of the way through or something like that. Was that part of your initial idea for it? Something that will sound like a normal like A-B section fiddle tune, and then all of a sudden there's a C part that hadn't been played before?
Yeah, that part of the tune was the first part that I wrote, actually, now that I remember it. And I was just messing with like an idea right around... So I was like coming up with that first, I think. And then because this shape is, really similar, I'm just doing like a 6th voicing or 6th interval on the 4th and the 2nd string for you podcast listeners. And then I was like, okay, what if I just did that in D? Because this is kind of, I don't know exactly what this is. It's kind of G stuff, like a F sharp on the bottom and an E on the top. So yeah, I think I was mostly playing, like this tune came out of mostly playing with 6th on the 4th and the 2nd string. I was trying to write a tune. Often I write tunes that are like, have nothing to do with the banjo. And by that I mean there's not a single roll in any of them. So,
what? So you mean they're like just purely melodic, or do you mean you actually write them on like a guitar or a piano or something?
Yeah, I don't play any other instruments, so I don't know why I have always done that. But like one of my earlier tunes, it's just so like un-banjo. It's like. It's stuff like that. Or it's like, It is, it's like played on a banjo, but there's not a roll in it, right? So like I was really influenced, especially when I first moved to Boston, by our good friend Gabe Hirschfeld, because you know, their band is like our big brother band, the Lonely Heartstring Band, and they got well off the ground before Mile 12 even existed. And Gabe would always write these really cool tunes that had like rolls and melodies and rolls, and like I was always like just writing single string ideas or like little jazz melodies or something. And my bandmates would always be like, why can't you write a tune like Gabe and we could do it with the band and it'll be cool and like banjo-y, you know, a banjo tune.
Right.
So when I was coming up with this song, I wanted it to sound like it had some rolling. It wasn't just a melodic style or a single string style. Like it had something that was unique to the banjo about it.
So after all these years, you're still just trying to write tunes as if you were Gabe Hirschfeld. Is that what I'm hearing?
Basically it. And I could never do it. Dang it.
Yeah, we'd all be better. Just channel our inner Gabe as
Definitely.
our guiding force. Yeah, cool. Anything else to say or demonstrate about that one? I mean, definitely people should go listen to it. Sounds like you make good use of the whole range of the instrument too, which is another cool thing about it. Yeah,
it definitely gets way up there. Yeah, and we were playing with it for a while in the key of F, but I would still just play the exact same version and just put my capo on the third fret. And so, and it was, the reason was because technically the mandolin and the fiddle can't play the melody. If it's in D, they have to do an octave switch. Okay. And so when we were trying to like just learn this tune and figure out who would play the melody and what would it be, and we were like, oh, well, let's just do it in F so that like mandolin and fiddle could play the melody. And we did it like that for months. And then after a while, like we had arranged it so that I am playing the melody the whole time and not taking solos, and other people were taking solos. I was like, why on earth don't we just do it in D? Because I'm the only one that ever plays the melody. You know, you guys are just soloing. So we, for a while, it didn't have a name yet. I hadn't decided it would be For My Mum, and we called it D-Tune, and then we called it D-Tune in F, and then we called it D-Tune in F and D. So it's not exactly a good piece of information, but there you go.
No, it's almost like the whole Noam Pikelny plays Kenny Baker plays Bill Monroe thing. You just keep the chain going.
Yeah.
That's funny. Another question for you. I've been to Telluride and I've seen firsthand how, you know, awe-inspiring all the mountains are there and everything like that. I've never been to New Zealand, but I've seen photos that actually make it look not completely different to Telluride. So you're the perfect person to ask. How does it compare being in some of like the scenic New Zealand places compared to Telluride? Are they similar?
Well, I would say Telluride is like more epic on its scale, right? So in like New Zealand mountains are big, but New Zealand isn't that big. So if you're driving around New Zealand, you might be like driving along the ocean side for a bit, and then you're like 20 minutes later, you're driving through all this farmland, and then 20 minutes more, you're in the like, you know, the Alps with the glaciers. And then the other 20 minutes, you're back on the beach, you know? So it's like, like, whereas in America, I'm we'll be driving on tour somewhere, even like North Carolina or something. And people were like, oh, we're really in the mountains now. And I'll like look around and just see like the highway and be like, did we like go up a mountain? You know, it's like less obvious, but it's like grander, you know? So it's like New Zealand is like quite striking because you see these like mountains and it's right next to like all this beautiful ocean or something. So it's like everything's a mini scale or something. And that's what makes it crazy. But in America, it's like, oh my God, these are like mountains. You know, these are just humongous and they're everywhere. But the ocean is like 2 days drive away, right?
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand. Yeah, just the magnitude.
Yeah, that's the insane. Magnitude is different. Yeah.
Let's go on. Waiting. This is Ella's song, so it's really cool to hear, you know, the new voice. Like you said, she's got a really cool voice. Almost sounds jazzy a little bit in moments.
I'm still gazing out my window, feeling lonely and confused, and I'm reeling as I process all of yesterday's news. They're always 20 steps ahead of me. I cannot match their pace. Someone told me I should be here, but I don't want to run this race.
Yeah, definitely. I think she grew up playing fiddle with her sister Minnie, and so she's a great jazz fiddler, and Ella is too, and they like would sing a lot together, and I think Ella would like play guitar and sing like
cool.
kind of swing stuff or Texas music. I don't know, I'm going to be saying it all wrong, but she's really deep into Texas swing kind of stuff, and it definitely really comes across in her vocals as well.
Any tidbits to say about your banjo approach? I really like it kind of has a really nice lyrical style. I guess I'm talking about your solo now for this piece.
Thanks.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have a specific question, but I just really like the sound of it. How did you come up with that stuff?
Yeah, well, it was like improvised again. I think this was a full solo, if I remember right. So it wasn't like any different takes in it. But I love playing over this feel, and I think Mile 12 has done a lot of it in the past. It's like a singer-songwriter feel, it's like kind of almost like half-timey, groovy, vibey stuff, and you can be really like heartfelt on it. If you can be heartfelt on the banjo, I don't know if that's possible, but I feel like it's this groove that like sets you up for that.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Just enough time to like be able to think about what you're doing a little bit.
Yeah, it's not like furiously fast or anything like that, and just beautiful. Like it was in a B flat, I think, if I remember right. Yeah, and just a nice key for the banjo. And I think I was doing a bunch of those same kind of voicings on this one from Hoppin', but soloing using those sixth on the fourth and second strings, I think. Another thing,
you're right.
Yeah, I did a lot on the CD. It turns out was these spread voicings. I can't remember if it was in this solo, but yeah, like ideas, like that kind of thing, which I feel like is nice, like just a different texture and getting like a little bit more than like ideas like that where you're just playing in such a short range. It's nice to those spread voicings just immediately give your sound a little bit more interval jumpness, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then, what was I just going to say? I wanted to ask, so you said it's in B flat. Were you playing that out of B flat? No capo?
I wasn't.
Just out of open B flat?
Yeah, I don't have my capo on right now, but yeah, on the recording I was like capoed to the third fret.
Because I know you do that. I recall you having a really cool arrangement of, I don't know.
Done Gone.
Done Gone.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I was going to say Daily is Real, but I didn't think that was right. So
I like that one open too, actually. The only one out of the B flat tunes is, as far as I can tell, there's only 3 B flat tunes. There's those 2 we just mentioned and New Camptown Races.
New Camptown
Races I like to have the capo on just because it's more like grassy,
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I know Ned does, I think, all 3 of those open without the capo.
Of course he does.
Of course he is. Smarty pants.
Anywhere Town.
That's definitely one of those ones where I was like, what on earth am I going to play on this song? But
so what did you play on it? I don't remember offhand. Is this the one where it's basically the same rhythm as the guitar?
Yeah.
You and the guitar really play together?
It's mandolin and banjo again. So similar to Johnny Oklahoma where there's like this riff that we're both doing in the choruses, but it's super atmospheric. Like there's not 1 second of there ever being a groove. Nate is playing a bowed bass the entire time. And it's kind of like the arrangement came out of like trying to make it feel like you're stuck in an airport forever or you were on the road and you didn't know which town you're in. So that kind of like crazy, like, where am I? What's going on kind of feeling. We were trying to get that happening.
A little bit of Twilight Zone.
Yeah, which is hence the sparseness of the arrangement.
Yeah, cool. When you just mentioned, like, what the heck are you going to do? Do you find yourself noodling to find what you're going to do? Or are you more the kind that just needs to like, maybe like meditate on the sound a bit and let the banjo's role in it come to you or what?
This was, it's a good question. Oftentimes we do this arrangement technique of play what you feel, which is a great way of just making something happen. Because if you're all sitting there together and you're like, well, what are we going to do this time? Like, who kicks it off or whatever? You're trying to come up with something new that you haven't really done, but that isn't untasteful for the song. But this one, I remember we had already arranged the song, and we had arranged it in this like bluesy kind of rocky fun feel, and like we did it for like a year before Evan finally spoke up, and he was like, guys, I just don't like this song, this arrangement doesn't really suit the song, like I want it to be kind of all atmospheric. And so after like a long time, we sat back down and we're like, well, what do you mean by atmospheric? Like, give us some specifics. So, and he actually does a very similar thing the entire time. He's playing guitar the whole way through and singing the song, but everything around him has changed completely from what we were doing. And it was more specific. Like we didn't really have time to meditate on it, but I remember sitting there being like, well, what about this voicing? We know we wanted a little like banjo like lick or idea or something. Just because what else is the banjo going to do? We don't want it to be like rolling. And I just remember like playing around with different, like it's in B flat, and I was playing around with different G minor sounds, and we came across like walking up from G to A to B flat, and then coming up with the low voice to like the C. So B flat, C, F, kind of like a sus sound. So it's like G minor, G minor 9 with that. I love that close interval there.
Yeah.
So good.
I like it too.
You bend it, you sound like Numb Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
And then now I'm out of tune. But yeah, that's basically the part of the riff that came up with that song.
Wonderful. Take Me As I Am. And this is kind of back to more of like, I guess, a quote unquote regular stomping kind of bluegrass feel. Something that I dig with your playing and that you really demonstrate in the solo on this is you can play melodically pretty high up the neck, which is a challenge without a lot of like open strings to use and stuff like that. So I'm wondering if there's anything that you can say about your approach to that, or what type of things do you work on to be able to maneuver your way around up there, if there's a way to demonstrate that or explain it.
This is a really tough song. I wasn't super stoked with the solo that ended up on the record, but it was the best I could do at the time, and that's the danger of improvising all your solos is you get what you get,
You might be stuck.
Yeah, so I definitely want to get better at playing on this song, and I feel like somebody that would really crush this song is Kyle Tuttle, because it's like kind of a jam bandy, like it needs to rage, and I feel like the thing I'm not happy with on the solo is like it doesn't rage quite hard enough. It's fine, but
you just don't have enough rage in you, BB.
I need more rage.
You need to get angrier.
I need more anger, yeah. But I love he's so epic with his like ideas, and so I've been thinking about this lately and trying to work on more ideas, like exactly what you're talking about. It's a fast tune, and it's got that like weird rocky kind of groove that the band's doing. Or like, string dusters kind of do that like double timey thing.
The heavy downbeat thing.
Yeah, and like you just can't have a spacious, tidy solo over top of that. Like it has to rage, is what I'm learning. So I'm trying to work on. But yeah, a lot of what I do is actually similar on this one. What I want to do is the melody with 6. Like, so the song's in F, and it starts on the B flat chord. But at a certain point, I want to be able to kind of go up, high and play some epic Kyle Tuttle licks.
Right.
So I was working on things like just grabbing, different positions. a cool thing, you know, if you go like up the scale, say I'm starting on like a C kind of chord voicing. That one's weird because you got 2 B flats, but starting on B flat, C, D, E, F, and I'm rapping to my thumb on the E note. And then I'm coming back down on the second string with my ring finger. That's the second string. That little figure is kind of a nice movable melodic style position. And you can move it, you can make it flat 7, that kind of thing. So that's kind of a cool thing. I don't know if it would exactly fit in this song, but then other voicings you could grab, like just grabbing 3 notes and grab 1 on the 5th string, So I've been trying to work on things like that for this song. But yeah, it's a challenge. I kind of have to have like these ideas road mapped out a little bit to be able to get into them and out of them successfully.
Right.
Yeah, that's
find
definitely
these little
hard.
like closed areas that you can work with. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think
That's
on the, that Baylor lick that's like, that everyone does. That's super cool. That's another good thing that works on this. Which I think is how I end the solo on the record. But yeah, you can really mix up like the rhythm of that roll nicely and create some like excitement,
Cool. For maximum rage.
For rage, yeah.
Awesome. If only, I think the most notable thing on this banjo-wise is obviously you're using a different tuning. Sounds like a Hartford low E kind of thing.
It's low E, yeah. I think that's right. And I kind of remember, we don't do it like that live, so I kind of remember the song's in the key of B. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lower tune though. So yeah, that's a cool thing to hear.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've gone through the songs. I think you mentioned that you have new band members, but I don't even know that we've sufficiently introduced the old band members. So why don't you just take people through, like introduce the players on the album and maybe just give like a quick sentence about like what types of things they are really good at adding to the band, I guess.
You mean for like Evan and Nate? Or
for all of them, yeah. Just introduce us to the whole band, because I don't know that we've heard all their names and heard about them.
Yeah. So the front man and singer and primary songwriter is Evan Murphy, and he's Bostonian. He plays guitar. He actually originally started on the banjo, but somebody told him, it's really hard to like sing and lead jams if you're the banjo player. So the guy was like, you should switch to the guitar. And so he did. And then later ran across that same guy, and the guy didn't even remember telling Evan that, even though it changed the whole future of Mile 12 would not have existed. But so yeah, that's Evan Murphy, and he wrote a lot of these good songs. So it's really a big part to him, that this project exists. And then Nate Sabat, he's the bass player. He's New York born and bred, and he's a lot of things, Nate. He's a great baritone singer. He's a great arranger. He's a great writer, songwriter. He can play the heck out of bass and bows it as well as pit stuff, He's a man with many talents, that guy. So that's Nate. And then the new kids on the block are Corey Brodsky. He's a mandolin player. We've known Corey for a long time because his dad plays bass. He's a really good bass player in this band called Rock Hearts. It's a New England bluegrass band. Mm-hmm. And they tour some as well. But so Corey grew up listening to bluegrass and was really steeped in it. He knows more bluegrass than any of us in the band. Like, wow. We'll like mention a song like, oh, maybe we should do this bluegrass song, and Corey will be like, oh, that's so overdone. And we'll be like, sorry, Mr. Bluegrass. But yeah, so Corey is a great guitar player as well as a mandolin player. He studied mandolin at Berkeley and just recently graduated. He joined the April Birch Band, and then pandemic happened, and so they didn't tour and everything. And then coming out of that, we were like, Corey, might you join our band? And he was like, yeah, let's do that. So we're lucky to be able to grab him. And then Ella Jordan is a fiddle player. She's Texas born and bred, and she's very proud of it. She's a fierce Texan. And she and her sister grew up, like I said, playing fiddles together from a really young age. And she went to Berkeley. She got in like years before she might have got in when she was like 9 years old. Not quite, but she was pretty young getting into Berkeley.
Oh,
and,
wow.
And just whizzed through that program real quick. And then like coming out of the pandemic, I think, you know, it's just good timing. She didn't have a full-time gig. And so we just like scooped her up at the right moment. And she's an awesome singer and great fiddler. Like really, you know, varied background. Like she's probably, unlike Corey, who's like steeped in bluegrass, she's more coming from that like lots of things really. Americana, bluegrass, old time, jazz. She's kind of pretty, you know, well-versed.
Yeah, excellent. And then, of course, we need to hear about the banjo that you played for the recording. Tell us what we're hearing.
This is my favorite part. This is a new banjo. Like last time I made myself listen to our old podcast episode, and I was like, wow, I was remembering that I had the Robin Smith Heartland banjo back then, which was, you know, the banjo I had for 15 or more years. But
yeah,
coming out of the pandemic, the week that David and Bronwyn left the band, so there's a lot of, we weren't even sure we were going to continue. I was deciding whether or not to buy this RB3 Gibson. And I was like, you know what the heck? If the worst comes to worst, I'll still be playing the banjo. I'll teach everyone Cripple Creek on an RB3.
Yeah.
So, I got this banjo from Nome. It's an amazing instrument. I feel really lucky to have it. And it's a weird banjo. I try and remember all my years and things. So it's a 1927, but it wasn't originally a flathead. And the guy who played it at the time was like a professional banjo player, and he wanted the new banjo that everyone had. So he went back into the Gibson workshop or factory or whatever and said, make this one a flathead for me. So this was in the 30s, like early 30s.
Oh,
and so they
like
made
a factory conversion from, interesting.
Yeah, so, but they put on the wrong sticker on the inside. So any banjo people that would look at this banjo would be like, this ain't an original flathead. They might not have a southern accent.
Okay.
But it looks wrong, yeah. So, but it's all documented and everything, like, so says Noam Bacalny, who sold it to me, right? But yeah, so it's like, it's a flathead that became a flathead after whatever 5 years of its life.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and it's a 2-piece flange, which is really unusual, so they tell me. Steve Huber had it for a while. So the only part of it that's been replaced, like the neck is original, but the fingerboard got replaced at some point by somebody.
It's an original 5-string.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
RB3.
Incredible. I didn't realize that.
That's how everyone says. I feel like I introduced it wrong because I got my digits around the wrong way or something, because everybody says that. But I think, doesn't RB3 mean that it's original or not?
It does, but I think people just don't, even when you say that, I think it just doesn't even register that that's what it could be, because so few of them are. So
right.
I think everyone just assumes that it's
got a new neck. Also, a lot of people prefer the new necks because, like, it's taken me, I've had it for, I guess I bought it in 2021. I've had it for a little while now, and it's still, you know, my old neck was radiused, you know. But the trouble is, the sound is incredible, and it's like even everywhere, and it's like it's cocaine. You can't get off it once you get it. You know, it's just got this amazing sound quality. So the fact that the neck is, you know, a little bit bigger than like wider and not radiused, you just get used to it because it's like it just produces this amazing tone. You know. Yeah.
And that's what's on the album. Every track.
Yeah, it was my first time recording it. Yeah. So, and I don't remember what microphones we used. I'm like, I wish I was a microphone person, but I'm not.
Quite all right. I always have to ask.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, BB. I'm straight out of questions. So,
awesome.
You know, if there's anything else you need to say about the album, feel free to say it. Otherwise, maybe give people like websites of how they can pick up their copy, or maybe even check like mile 12 tour dates and all that business.
Absolutely. You can find Mile 12, the CDs on our website. That's the best place to get it. The best place for us because we get all the money. But you can find it everywhere. And we love for people to just, check it out on Spotify or whatever streaming, thing you usually use. But yeah, if you want to go to our website, you could get all the T-shirts, all the goodies, all the, other stuff we have for sale, as well as that new record. It's mile12band.com. And there's just like a little page that's the store. So it's pretty straight in.
And you will be touring to help promote this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we're touring I don't know when this podcast episode will come out.
Soon.
Awesome.
This will be like within 2 weeks or so.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, so we'll be on tour in just a few weeks from then. And in all of March, we're touring. We're playing in Boston. We're playing at the Sinclair, which will be definitely the biggest venue we've played in Boston so far. And we're playing New York City, Rockwood, and we're playing Burlington, Vermont. We're playing all down the East Coast. We're flying to Florida for a festival and then touring back through Nashville, through Atlanta. You can find all the dates on the website, but yeah.
So hearing that you're doing fly gigs, now that you've told us that you're playing an original 5-string banjo, tell me how I'm stressed out for you.
I know.
Hearing about that. What's your secret?
Did you
buy the ticket?
No, I did when I was deciding or not to buy it. Luckily I got to try it for a week before I actually paid for it, which was great. I bought a seat to fly it back to Boston and try it out. But here's the thing I do, and I'm not sure people are probably going to write in and be like, she's crazy. But what I do is I have the American credit card and a Delta credit card. And for both of those companies, you get, in the first boarding group, if you have that credit card, it's like the perk of being, a member or whatever. Yeah, so I only bring this banjo if I'm flying one of those two airlines. And I know I can get in on the first group. And I still carry it in the Colton case and everything. But I've never not gotten it on the plane. And I'm not sure I would get on the plane with this banjo if they wouldn't if they said, no, you can't bring that on. Yeah, for some reason, I don't know, they're just being really, really difficult. I think I would probably miss the gig or something because I would just be too scared to gate check this,
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
So yeah, it's a little bit stressful, but yeah, I can't go, when I pick up my Robin Smith banjo, which I played for so long and loved that banjo to pieces and still love it, but it's just not the same. I don't know if I can go back. I have taken on tours when we can't fly American and Delta and stuff, and it's just hard. It just bums. It's like having a bad sound guy or something. It's just it's just bumming me out,
Once you've had the good stuff, it's hard to go back.
But yeah.
Yeah, I love the banjo I have that's just a modern banjo, and I went to Jim Mills's place recently to interview him, and so the banjos he has will just completely ruin you, of course. So
yeah, it's hard. It's a tough world we live in.
Yeah, too many good banjos.
Yep.
All right, BB. Well, thanks for everything. It was great seeing you. I think I'm actually seeing you probably again this weekend. Are we both going to be banjo summiting?
Yes, I'm so excited for that.
Okay. Yep. I'm sure I'll see you there. And we already have our Zoom things set up, so we'll be ready for it.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. You did hear plenty of sound clips, and they were all from that brand new Mile 12 release, Close Enough to Hear, which, as BB just told you, you can pick up from their website or stream on all the normal places where you might be streaming your music. Thank you once again to Laura Burke, today's Patreon supporter of the show. Head over to patreon.com/banjopodcast to support the show yourself and get your invitation to the monthly VIP lounge meetings, the next one of which is happening next Tuesday. That's February 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So I hope to see you all there, and I hope to see you all next time for the next episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. So long, folks.